Hi, it's Thursday, January 30th. Bill, how are you doing this evening?
Good. How are you?
I'm hanging in there. I'm tired. So I'm worn out. But this is, I think, the sixth, unless I messed up the number, the sixth time we're having an open discussion on a particular Clermont County Politico. And tonight's discussion is going to be on Allen Freeman, our current Common Pleas Clerk of Courts. And that's where we're going to go. And there were just a few Ohio Election Commission preliminary reviews relating to Allen Freeman and his campaign from 2020 today. But maybe if you start with just a background on who is Allen Freeman for anybody that might not know, kind of any history you want to hit on, and then we can just start from there.
Well, before we get started, I do want to address something. I was told by a few sources now that many folks in the Central Committee believe that I'm a very untrustworthy person because I do these podcasts and I'm in bed with Chris Hicks. If me calling out bad behavior of elected officials and agreeing with somebody that is saying things that are correct makes me an unethical or untrusting person, then I really feel the people saying that have no integrity. The fact that we have people sitting on Central Committee that vote on empty positions that would, instead of standing up for what's right, trying to bury it under the rug or belittling people behind their back for standing up for what's right. I don't know. We almost act like we're the liberals because this is the kind of stuff that I fight with liberals on constantly, is the hypocrisy or the just wanting to run their own agenda, not benefiting other people. I just want to say, any of you that feel that way, I think you're an unethical person, and you need to really do some soul searching if you're calling yourself a Christian, because when we're having deputies being charged with things and we have people working in county offices charged with embezzling funds and people trying to sleep with state representatives and having abortions and people passing Bibles around and hiring prostitutes and the many, many other things, and Allen Freeman is which we'll talk about tonight. As long as that's going on, these podcasts are going to continue, and Chris Hicks and I are going to be on the right side. So you really want to make Chris and I not have these podcasts? Step it up, start helping us call out the bad behavior, and get off your asses and do something about what's going on in Clermont County, because it's a mess and it's embarrassing. With that being said, Allen Freeman.
So hey, let me interrupt you, because everything you just said, anybody who listens to this or listens to this at 3 a.m., we don't rehearse, practice, talk much about we're going to talk about on these things. We knew we were going to talk about Allen Freeman about 15 minutes before the call. I sent Bill here's a list of things that I think I could bring up relating to Allen Freeman. We haven't talked about it. I had no idea you were just going to say the stuff you said, Bill. Okay.
No, neither did I.
But just as an aside, but when I was searching, so on some of the things on the list to talk about tonight, I was out like pulling up on my browser some news articles so I could flip and put them up, and just by serendipity, let me see if I can share this correctly. Okay, so just by serendipity, I put up, let me put it like this. Okay, when I was searching for things about Allen Freeman, this was one of the things, and I left the tab open, and I thought that maybe I had written, you can see here if you look, at the end of the little list of 11 things I wrote on my sheet, because I bumped into this when I was looking for links to open in a browser, and I wrote above the law starter pack, and I saw this, and it was just a post of mine. It's not specific to Allen Freeman, although he's on this list. And to the point you said about right, wrong, and I appreciate your comments. And I also appreciate that you and I are, whatever our differences have both been able to figure out there's bigger picture things we need to fix in Clermont County, and we need to make sure that we're not getting played against each other to the detriment of fixing those things. But right. Look at this list, because when you said when we have somebody do this or this or this, so Linda Fraley, nepotism, wintering in Florida. Jesse Kramig can't keep his thing in his pants. David Ubel, petition falsification. and trying to trick people with slate cards. To Colby, uh, uh, not a fair, just or right man. I think we could do a whole thing on that. We might have already done it. Greg Simpson threatening my son and me, getting it covered up, doing it more than one time, doing stuff like that. Stephanie Boyer lying when talking to detectives to protect Jesse Cramig. Jason Nagel lying when talking to detectives or selectively omitting the truth. Trish Lambeck getting in a rigged trial for after assaulting another Central Committee member. Greg Carson, who at one point was St. Greg, who turned out to be an embezzler on the committee. And his embezzlement, but not for me, would have been covered up by Brian Shriven and Mark DeCalvi. Pat Monger, who was using his office for his personal gain. Jean Schmidt, that's the one where in the race, her advisor paying somebody money to deal with a problem that she says she's very much against, and just a litany of things. And then tonight's topic, Allen Freeman. So I'll leave it at that. But just as it's just funny, Bill, that you said that stuff, because like I said, I had no knowledge that you were going to say anything at the beginning there. But I
5
just
minutes
have
before
that
this,
cribbed, because when I was looking up stuff on Allen Freeman, that thing popped up, and I thought, hey, maybe at the end of the call that would be a good one to put up. But I thought that based on what you said, that it might be good to throw up at the beginning. But to your point, and I'm going to shut up. When you have, if somebody who is against you or me can point to us how things that we're saying about these people are false, they should do so. They should bring that up rather than play that we're not loyal, we're not right. It's kind of like I used to say, the people, there were people, I'm an ex-Catholic, people in the Catholic Church that thought the best thing to do was to cover up pedophile priests. And my point was that didn't help anybody. That was not the solution. We have to expose the corruption of the political class in Clermont County. We need to understand that it's very similar to at the national level. The same stuff that goes on at the national level happens in our backyard as well. So let me shut up. Do you want to say anything else before we get into Allen Freeman?
well, I'll just say 5 minutes before the call, I was finishing up a call with someone. And that's what prompted this, because that was another person that had brought up to me that, hey, I just really got to be careful. You're really getting kind of in bed with Chris, and I just want to make sure it's right. And once I dealt with that person and explained things, that person understood what I was saying and kind of retracted. But it's people like, I'm just going to go on record and say it's people like James Kidwell that stirs things up. And James and I have been friends a long time, and we're coming at the tail end of that relationship, because I cannot in good conscience watch somebody say, we got to support Greg Simpson. Yeah, I know he lied. Yeah, I know he did what he did, but we got to let it go. No, I don't. Greg Simpson owes the Central Committee an apology. He owes the Sheriff's Department an apology. He owes you a personal apology for, making you assume that you were going to be attacked and your son. It's one thing, again, I don't know what goes on in these people's crazy minds. Like, I don't think about doing. You and I have fought for a long time, and the thought has never crossed my mind, I'm going to make up a story to intimidate Chris Hicks and make him feel like he's going to be physically threatened. I mean, I just, the closest I've come is that I was going to come over there and do something personally to an officer, but to make up false stories and create this and then go to the Sheriff's Department to that level, these people have got to get their thinking straight. We're not Republicans acting like this. So we're not Republicans acting like this. I would be embarrassed to tell some of these stories with the screen you just come up. If I'm on the phone with Senator Marino talking to him, I'm embarrassed by some of the stuff that goes on in Clermont County when I have conversations, because we're better than that. Our county's better than this. We really are. And it's just a few bad people in positions that they shouldn't be in. And I think that's a good segue into this Allen Freeman discussion, because Allen Freeman has been a Pierce Township trustee for years. I was about 2 to 3 years ago, I would have said, yeah, I like Allen Freeman. He's a great guy. I would have stuck up for Allen Freeman. And I try to give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I've went out to eat with Allen Freeman, had a conversation with him one time, and I point blank asked him about everything that's going on with this case. This case has been going on for what? These cases for
Since
2 years, 3 years?
2021.
21. So 3 years, 3 solid years.
I'm sorry. That's the new. No, since 2020.
Okay.
So there's a case from 20. There's a
years.
case from 20, 21, and 22. The 21's now done. But go ahead. It started in 20.
So he's been a Pierce Township trustee, and a lot of people that I would consider I had respect for have respect for Allen Freeman. And Allen is what I thought was an ethical person. I thought he was a good guy. And then over the last years, and I'll be honest with you, Chris, all this stuff on this list to discuss that you had written, I don't know much about any of it. You're going to be driving most of this conversation. I don't know about Beckjord. I know high level, but I don't know the details. I know, like I was asking you questions about this elections complaint and the case with the Elections Commission. Mm-hmm. I know some details, but I don't know all of the level. I came to this conclusion about who Allen Freeman was has nothing to do with what we're discussing tonight. I came to that conclusion on my own with my own interactions with Allen Freeman. So I want that to be known tonight, that anything that's discussed here, Chris Hicks did not influence my opinion about Allen Freeman. Quite frankly, Chris has not influenced my opinion about anybody. And I'll put my hand on a Bible and swear to that. I have developed my opinions about these elected officials, dealing with them on my own or interacting with them on my own, and watching this type of behavior, the lying and the deceitfulness. And, and then on church Sunday, I'm a Christian. I take the term Christian very serious. I'm a sinner. I make lots of mistakes. I make lots of failures. I fail God all the time. Never going to sit on a pedestal and say I don't. But I am be the first one to stand up and say I failed or I did something wrong here. None of these people, none of them, Allen Freeman, none of them will ever come. They will sit and write paragraphs explaining their pathetic behavior before they would just say, you know what? I made a mistake. What can I do to rectify the situation? And I'll pay restitution, whatever. Right. I mean, we expect our criminals in the justice system to do that. A judge expects you go in front of a judge. Your attorney is going to tell you if you're going to take a plea deal or if you're going to plead guilty. I'm sorry, if you plead no contest or guilty, your best shot is to go to that judge and say, you know what, Your Honor, I stole this from Lowe's or I stole this from whatever store, and I what can I do to fix the situation? I'll pay restitution. I'll join a program. That's what the judges want to hear, and you're going to get the best deal doing that than lying and trying to justify your bad behavior.
Well, today, as a side note, to go ahead here for a second, is at one point during one of the preliminary review hearings at the Ohio Election Commission that said today, I got up and I said, wouldn't you love to have just once one of these people that are in the insider class? By the way, Freeman is still at some level an insider class person. And I said, wouldn't you love to have one of these people stand up here and say that the reason this complaint should be dismissed at this time is because I fixed the reporting issues in my campaign finance? But They never say that. They just blatantly, Allen Freeman, just so people know, in 2020, when he ran for state rep and lost in the primary, he was the householder candidate. He had $140,000 of television and radio advertising, proven numbers up through the Election Commission, the Common Pleas, Franklin County Common Pleas, the Appeals Court. The Supreme Court rejected hearing the case further, where there were commercials run where he was in the commercials. He was in the commercials and sat there claiming he didn't know anything about commercials running. I mean, that is how preposterous these people are. By the way, the commercials were all filmed at Jean Schmidt's sister's house or at her Remax office or whatever it is where all the commercials were filmed. I want to segue back just for 1 second, Bill, on you and I and people and the things you said at the beginning. Is I think that you and I, getting to know you better over time, I think that you and I, there's some significant things that we'll disagree on. And but what I think we have come to the realization is, one of our biggest differences, probably more than probably our single biggest difference, and you may have a different opinion, so you can say it, has been with the approach. Okay. And by the way, that's the number one criticism I get is my approach of putting everything out there, being like a bullhorn, not, working it out in the family, all that kind of stuff. And I think over time, I think that you made a good faith effort to address a lot of these kind of issues from the inside, and then you came to probably the biggest thing that has caused you and me, in my opinion, to work more together on stuff like doing these podcasts is because you kind of realized at some point this working on the inside wasn't working. And that's and kind of like all the effort and all the time you put into trying to work things to a better place on the inside, you wake up and realize that the swamp system is not going to let that succeed. And I think you and I are both on a lot of these issues on the same page. Would love to see a better Clermont County GOP. And, ultimately that's very hard. It is super entrenched the way things work, and it is super difficult to get any change to happen. So
it was, I really did. And I mean, I spent hours on the phone with Jeff Corcoran, hours. And I will never get that time back. It was an absolute waste of time trying to say, hey, we shouldn't do this, or this is not the right way to do it. Or like the time Greg Simpson went on record before we endorsed in our governor's race, he wrote positive about DeWine.
Yeah.
And for the good of the party, I called Greg and said, you need to write an apology letter. Well, I don't know what to write. I mean, and asked me to write it. I said, well, if I write this, it needs to be sent out from you, because it wasn't about me. It was about making the party look better. I mean, right. I tried everything. And you're right. I realized that all I'm doing is it's like exacerbating the situation.
Well, I think another thing too is when you realize that these people are, quote unquote, lying to me. When you realize they're not just lying to other people, they're lying to, so any event, I just think, and I think when I say that, it's like what I think of most is my suspension, the lie about what was like even getting suspended for, and so any event, why don't we segue, unless you want to have a closing comment on that, get back to Allen Freeman, get into Allen Freeman and some of the key things around him.
I will tell any of you that watch this, if you are believing that you can bring change from the inside, or like somebody said in the Central Committee, what happens in the barracks stays in the barracks, and you're not supposed to talk about it publicly. I'm going to tell you right now, that's not how it works in politics. And if you allow it to work, you're going to screw the county up even more, because these people are in very, very influential positions. And if we don't have the right people in those positions, it not just deteriorates the party, it deteriorates our justice system and everything. Because look at what's going on in the Clermont County courts. We've had so much turnover; it's horrible. I don't even know how they're dealing with all the turnover, to be honest with you. But it's don't try to change from the inside, because it's not going to work. People are just going to take advantage of you, and that's all I'll say. We can move on.
So let's go to and then maybe for some of these things, the key things with Allen Freeman, and you said there's a lot of these things you're not that familiar with. So let me just try to hit some of them. Right before the call, I tried to list out some of the things that I thought were key things for people to know related to Allen Freeman. Some of them are outright corrupt. Some of them are not necessarily, but they're important to know. And the first one that I had, because I'm kind of thinking chronologically, and again, I should have thought more before the call about this, but the first one is Beckjord. So if this is an article from WCPO, it is from, when is this from? 2018. So 2018, February 2018. This is when Beckjord was sold from Duke to a company, I can't even remember the name, Commercial Liability Partners. Okay. Allen Freeman, there was a Channel 9 story. Allen Freeman was one of the faces in the story. None of the commissioners were in it. And Adam Byrd, by the way, was one of the faces in the story. where Alan Bird said, I think it will be really good for Clermont County. I don't know if you see that. I got that line right here. And so what this was these guys basically sold out the sale on Duke Energy, on the citizens of Clermont County, on Beckjord. They let it get sold to this company called Commercial Liability Partners, relieving Duke Energy of all liability in return for a $250,000 payment 3 times, so $750,000 total, to a charity you've probably never heard of called Clermont Connect, which was run by all kind of insiders like the ex-senator that lives in New Richmond, Niehaus was involved. This insider charity, when you have this Duke thing right next to the well field for the county where there had already been some issues with contamination, and none of our political people should have been excited about this deal. It stunk from the very beginning. And frankly, the first reaction when I told people about this deal that are in the know was, if they were wanting to get corrupt money out of this deal, they could have got way more than $750,000. They literally let Duke off the hook for millions and millions of dollars of potential liability for $750,000 getting paid to an insider charity called Clermont Connect that I don't even know if it still exists even to this day. And then I think to this day, I haven't driven down there lately, but it's just sitting there. There was all this promise in 2018. Think about this. We're going to be approaching 10 years since this sale. But if anybody thinks back to 2018, it was going to become a port down there, entertainment stuff, new industry, all these things were going to happen down there. And then if you go forward and you look at other articles about this, and you can find the articles. The funny thing is the articles are out there. Okay, that you can know stuff's going on, but there were things like when they demoed the tower, it fell in the river. They didn't move the coal ash off of the site, because they got off on all these things. That they were originally the requirement from the county was that all the coal ash had to get moved off the site, and instead they just let them move it to the ponds that were stronger. So that's one thing. So Freeman was involved in that in Pierce Township, but that supposedly was going to be a big deal for Pierce Township, and nothing really ever has happened that I know of. I don't know what's going on to this day. Okay. And I'm assuming, Bill, you're not knowledgeable much about that thing. So I'm just going to move on to the second one. If you go look at my Facebook page and search on Beckjord, I did lots of stuff back in 2018 on this.
Yeah, I know there was a lot.
Lots of stuff. I went down there to the well fields and stuff like that in 2018.
Yeah, I know there's a lot out there. There's a lot on your page.
So let's go forward to the stuff that is really the core stuff, is the 2020 campaign and Larry Householder. So Allen Freeman was a Larry Householder candidate. He was in a 3-way race with Nick Owens, Adam Byrd, and him. The Clermont County Republican Party's endorsed candidate was Adam Byrd. And what happened was, if anybody remembers back to that day, that crooked Larry Householder operation had a bunch of dark money spend that happened as under the Growth and Opportunity PAC. But in addition to that, Allen Freeman ran a campaign that had $280,000 of Larry Householder money spent on the campaign under the banner of paid for by the committee to elect Allen Freeman, and in which nothing was ever reported. Nothing was ever reported on any campaign finance report. And just as an example, I'll put up here, there were TV ads, there were radio ads, and what happened was they had so much crooked money from the Larry Householder stuff that they didn't know what to do with it. So think of this for a second. When you buy, for example, TV time on Cincinnati television stations for a Clermont County rep primary, what percentage of the people watching, say, Channel 9 at any point in time are Clermont County voters? A very small percent. So they were doing huge buys, though, on Cincinnati media for Allen Freeman and Gene Schmidt using this money, it didn't make financial sense because you're mostly advertising to people who can't even vote in a race. But I put up here, here's some of the mailers paid for by committee to elect Allen Freeman, committee to elect Allen Freeman. Here's a comparison paid for by the committee to elect Allen Freeman. These were all done through the household organization. They were all paid through a corporation called Constant Content. Allen Freeman never reported anything, nothing, zero on this, never paid any bills, okay? And then tries to still to this day get away with it. And so these, one of the things that's funny, Bill, is I think I texted you this one right before the call. This is one of them, one of these cards, and he's telling, this is Allen Freeman telling people to vote against people on the slate card. Because at the time, Joe Dills, if you remember back to that race, Joe Dills and Adam Byrd were the endorsed candidates, and Joe Dills and so Allen Freeman was not, and Gene Schmidt was not, and so they were both at that time. The funny thing that's I'm sure you think is amusing is, I've been guilty of doing things directly against the Clermont County card and the Clermont County thing, and I'm Satan. But if you're some of these people, you can do very similar things that I've ever done, and it's okay, and you can still be a Satan party.
Can you put that image back up real quick?
Yeah, hold on. There we go.
So one of the things, I was just on the phone with a person's essential committee member. It was, they felt that it was really wrong to go against an endorsed candidate if you're going to be on the central committee. So if you're on our central committee, well, I shouldn't say our because I'm not on it right now. If you're on the central committee and the committee votes to endorse a candidate, you're expected, I wouldn't say you're under any sort of authority to do this, but you're expected to support the endorsed candidate even if you don't believe that candidate's the right person, because the majority voted to endorse the candidate. So you joined the organization, you signed up it's a democracy. Everybody voted, that person got endorsed. Now you should play ball because you joined the organization. You don't like it, don't be on the organization. Chris, you and I may disagree with this to some extent, but I agree with that philosophy because I have control over whether I'm on the central committee or not. I signed up to be on it. It's solidarity. We all agreed to support the candidate. Right here is a perfect example of a tenured committee member blatantly dogging the endorsed candidates, saying official endorsed candidates, Clermont County, fake conservatives. I have heard nothing but Chris Hicks be trashed for years for fake endorsement cards. I've gotten on Chris for fake endorsement cards, but it has been a topic of conversation in the Central Committee of what a piece of garbage Chris Hicks is to be a Central Committee member and do this. I have not heard one person in that pro-Allen Freeman group come out and be with any integrity and say, this was absolutely treason against the party. Chris Hicks has been accused of treason dozens and dozens of times. Still to this day gets accused of treason against the party. This right here, if you're going to qualify what Chris did, this right here qualifies as treason because not only are you promoting against the candidates, you called our endorsed candidate a fake conservative. That is an absolute direct slap in the face. And the fact that these people they're like, oh, I guess it's no big deal. You people are pathetic. You people are absolutely freaking pathetic that this mailer doesn't infuriate you. I'm going to call some names out. James Kidwell, Bill Muse, both of you this should infuriate you, but it doesn't because Allen Freeman's in the group, so we're going to be okay with it.
Well, Gene Schmidt's the same. Okay.
Gene Schmidt.
And think about this. These people also entered a deal with the devil. The things I'm putting up here are the stuff that says, if you look in the upper left, they're paid for by committee to elect Allen Freeman. Okay. This isn't, if you remember back to that time, the Growth and Opportunity PAC was pumping out shit like $500,000 worth of stuff came out separate from the 280 that I'm talking about. $500,000 was spent through dark money that said paid for by Growth and Opportunity PAC that was against these quote unquote endorsed candidates. Now, where you and I will differ, but I think we're not as far apart as it would seem, on some of this, is my strong view is that in the primary, I am so sick. One of the roots to all evil, I think, in the party is primary endorsement. And you're not there with me at the level that I am, but I think you and I would probably agree that there needs to be more races without rigged endorsements, controlling the races in the primary. In the primary, I think the best I like competitive primaries. I like primaries where there's more than one person running. And I think when we're not having that, but to the point that you're making, I've always had that view, right? I've always said the same thing. The people like Allen Freeman would be the ones saying, I'm Satan for ever challenging an endorsed candidate in the primary, but they do it and it's fine. Gene Schmidt did it and it's fine. But it's very selective. The people have no, kind of, what do you call it? Like a moral and ethical compass on right and wrong in this stuff. So that's just one of them. So,
I wonder, Chris, how did you get that mailer? Because you forgot to black out it said from the, it says,
I don't know this one in particular. I know it says the Bird household on there, but yeah, a lot of these, I got like, these are all blacked out and stuff like that on who got them. You have to go back to the era. These cases are so old that when this stuff was going down, the people involved, they were like, by the way, you and I probably agree with this. As it comes to politicos in the Clermont GOP, I don't think you and I would have put Adam Byrd on the same plateau, but we'd put him at a higher plateau than just about any of these other people that are candidates in terms of trying to be an effective conservative in their role. And,
right.
So Adam Byrd, who was the endorsed candidate for Clermont County GOP in 2020, he was none too happy, I'm sure, with Freeman having hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I just want to make clear to everybody, Allen Freeman had $150,000 of bulk mail done on behalf with the disclaimer paid for by the committee to elect Allen Freeman that was never reported anywhere. According to his own campaign finance reports from 2020 primary, Allen Freeman only spent $15,000 on his whole campaign. I think 2020 was a while ago. And guess what he tried to do, Bill? What he was trying to do is he had $90,000 still in his account after the primary, $90,000. You and I both know that when you're in a competitive campaign like that, and remember, that was the COVID primary where people ran out of money when they thought the vote was going to be. And then all of a sudden they have another month of campaigning to do, if you remember. Like Nick Owens, for example, you basically spend all your money, right? You spend all your money time to the election day. And at the election day, you're broke because you've spent all your money. Who the hell? So Freeman's own records is that he had like $105,000. But in a three-way competitive race where he wasn't the endorsed candidate, he only spent $15,000 and left $90,000 sitting there. What he was trying to do is roll that money without paying any bills, so he could use it in a future campaign. It just speaks to the unethical nature of the way the guy operates. And
I'm going to take it one step further. It doesn't just speak to the unethical behavior; it speaks to the stupidity. Like, how dumb is this? It's kind of like going back to like David Jubal. Now, I left with David Jubal on good terms. I had a nice, good conversation when he exited politics. So I'm not going to badmouth David Jubal because I know David Jubal did a lot of stupid, unethical things. I'm not going to deny that. But my advice to him was, David, it's time to hang it up. It's time to get out of politics until you can get this, whatever's going on with you, figured out in life. You need to get out of politics. I'm not saying he left because of me, but that was my advice to him one-on-one in a private conversation. You need to just walk away for now. And I probably did him the biggest favor in his life because, he can move on. I just don't understand what drives, like, why lie? He lied about the, printing of the endorsement cards, like something so
Right.
stupid. And Allen Freeman, just report the stuff. Like, I don't understand. Maybe
Well,
you can help me understand why somebody would want to lie about
well,
how
here's
much they
his problem. Here's Alan Freeman's problem is that he probably thought he was going to win, and he almost won. He's the as I know, he's the only householder back candidate that lost in the 2020 primary. Okay, so he, had 90,000 left over, but he's looking at $280,000 worth of bills, right? But now householder at some point is going to go to jail, right? So maybe I can just not pay any of these bills. I can act like my head in the sand, and the whole thing's collapsing, and then I'll come out with $90,000 still left over. And I'll tell you what, Bill, at the Ohio Election Commission, which is a joke, it is a swamp, corrupt joke. And the only reason I'm successful there is because of the brutal nature of pursuing things that you are familiar with coming from me. Like, as a lone wolf pursuing something, I don't let go, right? I keep focus. I do the work. I respond to everything. Well, he almost got off with it there. Almost every time when somebody that's connected to the insider world comes before the Ohio Election Commission, the executive director, Phil Richter, will always recommend that the case be dismissed. Pretty much. I think today might have been the first time. There was one of the cases today where he recommended it go to a full hearing. I think pretty much every case there's some dink cases I've brought I've won every case so far. That won't persist, but some dink ones that are kind of like layup things. But every substantive case, he has recommended it be dismissed because these people get off all the time. What is so screwball is if you or I or somebody we knew ran for school board or something, and we didn't do our campaign finance right, we're getting dinged. We would be afraid, we have to go to the commission. We have to do this. The regular people, the grassroots candidates, they're the ones that get raked over the coals. And in the last cycle, in this most recent cycle, for all the DeWine corruption, the $500K that was given to his campaign by the ORP that shouldn't have, all that kind of stuff. Nothing happens with that. Nothing happens to Larry Householder before the election commission. But who got dinged the biggest? Joe Blystone. Why? Joe Blystone had absolutely screwed up campaign finance reporting. There is no question about it.
Really
but he got targeted because he was an outsider. Had LaRose, Mike DeWine, Dave Yost done the same things that Blystone did, they would never have been. It would have been swept under the rug because
it's a different set of rules. I mean, it. Not that I would ever justify liberals because I think they're disgusting, despicable people. But and how do I say this? We inflame situations because of how unethical we are in our own Republican Party. And I often tell people, yeah, I do argue with liberals a lot, but quite frankly, if you look at Change Clermont, except for lately because they've been off their rocker lately, I'm typically writing about what's going on with Republicans. I mean, we've got to clean up our own house. We really do. It's bad.
Well, at the Ohio Election Commission, I can't speak for when there's a Democrat. There's no illusion that they want to think I'm a right-wing Trump type person, and that I go after Republican crooked campaign finance because that's the world in which I would know anything about it. I wouldn't know any, but I can tell you, if you go watch those videos, the Democrat and independent commissioners are listening more during hearings. The Republican commissioners are much more like they're there to protect the team, if you get what I'm saying. And they're the ones that make the preposterous kind of claims. And so I'm not making any statement. I'm just saying you can tell who's listening and who's asking good questions versus who's trying to support a narrative to protect the team. So any event, what happened in relating to the TV and media part of Allen Freeman's campaign. And by the way, since he's our new clerk of courts, we should all want to know about these things. So he ended up after, I think it was, so the case started in 2020, and I'm going to share up here, Bill. The case started in 2020. the first hearing was, I believe it was October 7th or something like that of 2021. Okay. And so on December 16th, 2021, Freeman got assessed a $50K fine for not reporting the TV part of his campaign, the $140K TV and radio part of the campaign. So that was covered in the Cincinnati Enquirer, and it was covered in the Plain Dealer. Okay. And these are the two articles relating to that. Okay. So he has never since then fixed any of his campaign finance reports. He has never, admitted that he was wrong on the part that's the media. And so back when that was going on, though, there was a separate the print stuff, the mailers and stuff that I put up was I tried to have that be combined into the same case. And Allen Freeman argued through his counsel that it was a separate, very different case on the mailing campaign. And I agreed it was, by the way. It is, because I tell you, there was overwhelming evidence that Allen Freeman was personally approving each mailer going out the door, which there wasn't overwhelming evidence of approving each ad purchase, okay, on the TV side. And he talked about his mailing program in the Brown County Candidate Forum, a mailing program where he talks about it in the candidate forum, but not a single expense ever appeared on his campaign finance report for any mailings. And so today there was on the $50,000 fine and what happened from the 2020 thing, he appealed it to the Common Pleas Court. He appealed it to the appeals court, and he appealed it to the Supreme Court. They denied to hear it. And so his fine became final. He had exhausted all appeals just over this past year. I think it was sometime in 2024, when that happened. Okay. And like it might have been summer. I just can't remember off the top of my head. And so he exhausted all of his appeals. So there have been other cases, the mailing part and another part related, have been sitting out there for 3 years with the Ohio Election Commission doing nothing. And it's so bad, so corrupt. I don't know if I've ever told you this, Bill. I had to file 2 mandamus actions to get the commission to even schedule the preliminary reviews. So they refused to schedule the preliminary reviews. I had to go to the appeals court in the 10th district in mandamus actions to force the court to get them to do the preliminary reviews. And what happens, though, is this is the way government works if you're the citizen. I keep trying to get them to schedule the preliminary reviews. They won't schedule the preliminary reviews. I file a mandamus action. As soon as I file the mandamus action, right after it, they schedule the preliminary reviews. Then they file something to dismiss my mandamus action because they've taken the action I want. But I had to spend $100, and I had to go through a bunch of court gorp just to get a hearing scheduled. Because I'll tell you what, the attitude of the Election Commission and with people like Freeman is not that, it's great. We need more citizens to hold elected officials accountable on campaign finance. It's that you're evil. I'm evil for doing this. I'm evil for bringing up campaign finance issues and on stuff like this. So anyway, just today, there were 2 more preliminary reviews, and one of them got continued to have more preliminary review, and one of them got held over for a full hearing relating to Allen Freeman. And now Kurt Hartman is representing Allen Freeman. And,
wait a minute. What?
Yes, Kurt Hartman represents Allen Freeman. He represented Allen Freeman on the Supreme Court thing. And
man,
I'm sure it drives these people crazy that, because I'm the idiot lunatic, and I have a lot of failures, and this, and you used to point them out. Okay. But actually my run rate is pretty good for being an outsider and being the what I bring at these things. The fact that I'm so far 7-0 at the Election Commission, I've never had a complaint dismissed ever thus far. This one might get the one they continue the preliminary review could be, but it drives these people crazy. I beat Don Bray, the foremost rigged attorney before the Election Commission, on Freeman's first thing. Now Kurt Hartman is his lawyer. And we'll see how that goes. I don't think Kurt was none too happy that they didn't dismiss the case. He really, really wanted the case.
Kurt Hartman is a terrible attorney. I don't even know how to even respond. I did not know Hartman took this Freeman case. He must be really bottom feeding at this point for cases.
Well, I think he wants to get in good. Here's my thing, and so I'm gonna go on a real quick foray here. Is when I was encouraged to go to and some people might not understand quite what I'm talking about, and Bill, you'll understand it. Might need. But when I was encouraged to go to the ORP, the Ohio Republican Party, on what was the correct central committee and whether appointed members that don't live in their precinct were correct central members, the person that was trying to get me to do that was Brian Shrive, okay, behind the scenes. I wasn't supposed to know it was Brian Shrive. And supposedly it was part of a big scheme in which the ORP was going to rule for me, AKA Bill, why did Gloria Martin resign? Okay, because that was already going to be a done deal. They were going to rule for me. So some of the people that resigned had been told by Alex Tranafilo that they were going to rule for me. So they were getting ahead of the curve to look like they were geniuses. And then, but the way it was going to work was they were supposedly going to rule for me. And then Kurt Hartman was going to pro bono take the Clermont County Republican Party case to fight me. That was going to make him a hero. And then he was going to run for judge, move to Clermont County, move back to Clermont County, run for judge, and he would be an endorsed candidate. That was supposedly the scheme as to how that was supposed to go down. So Kurt Hartman wants to get in good with the Clermont County Republican Party so he can be a judge in Clermont County. So he doesn't currently live in Clermont County, but that would be the design that he gets at some point is going to come back and try to be a judge.
Let me say a few things on that. So Kurt Hartman is probably not going to watch this podcast, but Allen Freeman's going to watch it, and he'll relay this message to Kurt. Kurt, it'll be over my dead body before you become a judge in Clermont County. That case I had with when Lerman, that liberal idiot that tried to file a protection order on me, and the dumb judge, I don't even remember what judge it was. Part of it was Lerman lied, but we don't. In Clermont County, it's okay to lie in court. You're not going to be held accountable. He got it temporary order awarded. At the time, Tucolby and I were still talking. Tucolby says you need to get an attorney, and you need to call Gary Rosenhofer. Gary Rosenhofer it calls me back, finds out that Lerman is tied in with Myra Powers, who's a Milford School Board liberal nut, school board member, liberal nut job. Apparently, it's Gary Rosenhofer's ex-wife. And he's like, I'm not representing you if it has anything to do with my ex-wife because she's nuts and I want nothing to do with her. I'm like, really? You're going to just bail on me because of the fact that he knows her? Because I guess Myra called Gary, somehow got wind of it. It was a disaster. So the next person Tucolby recommended was for me to call Kurt Hartman. So I call Kurt Hartman. Kurt Hartman it was awful. Like, honestly, the hearing was on Tuesday. I texted Kurt on Monday, and I had a hearing scheduled for Tuesday. I said, Kurt, don't come to court. I'm going to do this myself. And I went to, obviously, the rest of the story. I went to court, whipped Lerman's ass 10 times from Sundays, and in front of everybody, embarrassed him in court. And that case was immediately dropped. They didn't even take it under advisement. The judge is like, normally I'm going to take these under advisement. I'm just ruling on this now. It was that bad.
That's like TV court when they rule right there.
So Kurt Hartman, I wouldn't even hire him for an easy. I won the case, and I wouldn't even hire Kurt Hartman for an easy protection order defending case. The fact that Freeman is putting his eggs in Kurt Hartman's basket, dude, you're an idiot. I'm just going to say it, Freeman. You're an idiot for that. That's dumb.
So at the hearing today, and this is funny, or people listening or who listen to this in the middle of the night will think I should think this is funny. So yesterday, the hearing was today at 10 a.m. Okay. Yesterday at 2 p.m. Okay, Allen Freeman never filed a response. You're supposed to file a response it's like within 30 days of a complaint. So the complaint today was from 2021, and he had never filed a response. Kurt Hartman at 2 p.m. yesterday files 4 motions into the case. 2 p.m. yesterday. Okay. The executive director, who people don't realize this, and we should do a whole thing on how the Ohio Election Commission works, because people might, I could go through some how to file complaints and stuff, winning complaints, and the executive director by 5:30 has issued an agenda, and people don't know that he tells them how to vote in the agenda. They have a secret agenda for the commissioners that tells them how they're supposed to vote. His recommendation on how they vote. And it was to dismiss the case based on res judicata, which is a term that is like double jeopardy on a civil matter. But I didn't even have a chance to respond. And so had Kurt Hartman, because the fix was in, but there's a lot of times, if you go back and watch my OEC things, there's a lot of things that end up tie votes, and like where you're sitting there, it's like, if this was a TV show, I couldn't believe this would happen. And that happened with Brian Stewart, like a tie vote and this. And today it happened too. It happened where they had to take multiple votes, but it ended up stopping the recommendation of the executive director. But had Kurt Hartman filed his motions 3 days ago, he probably would have got the case dismissed today. What rubs particularly the Democrat and independent commissioners wrong was this in the middle of the night, 4 motions, and now we're going to dismiss the case, and the guy, Chris Hicks, hasn't even had a chance to respond to him. I'll just throw on there, this is the first time I've dealt with Kurt Hartman directly on a matter, so we'll see what the deal is with him. But, when Freeman has lied and lied and lied about this, then having an attorney that seems to do unethical things in terms of a bunch of motions right before the hearing, that's not helping. That's Allen Freeman. That's not helping you. And by the way, the other thing, Bill, when it comes out, the hearing started. I was supposed to talk. It's not a hearing. It's not a hearing. It's preliminary review is not a hearing, but it is a hearing. But when the preliminary review started, I would get to go first. So they asked me to talk. Kurt Hartman interrupts me before I'm walking to the podium that he wants to put something on the record. And then he just lights up the chair, Tavares. He just rips her a new one that she needs to recuse herself from the case immediately over some gorp he's talking about, and just totally pisses them all off. And so the video, I used to record them, but now I just get their video because they've improved their video a lot. But it's like, are you crazy? Like, why are you getting up there and you're going to start out your whole thing by attacking the chair of the Ohio Election Commission from the podium, interrupting when I'm supposed to be presenting my case? Like that. It's Allen. I think Allen should keep Kurt Hartman as his lawyer. Kurt Hartman's doing a fantastic job in this, and that's what you wanted, Allen, today, was that it get continued, which is not what he wanted. So that's what's going on with a little bit of the thing. But I wanted to hit on something you could, I think, relate to, Bill, is that this past primary, the 24 primary, and I'm going to throw this up on the screen here. This is the style of me that people don't like, by the way, and you might not like it either, Bill. But this was a Facebook post because we had the endorsement for Clerk of Courts, Common Pleas Clerk of Courts, for the Clermont County GOP for the primary. And Allen Freeman won the endorsement by 1 vote. Had I been allowed to vote, which I wasn't because I was suspended at this time, he would not have been endorsed. Had Debbie Seagroth not been going to the bathroom, he would not have been endorsed. Because if you go talk to Debbie Seagroth, she's like, I walked out of the room. You know how disorganized the endorsement meeting was.
It was
so she, I had to go to the bathroom. I stepped out of the room. When I came back, I heard I wasn't gone for just a few minutes and that Allen Freeman had been endorsed. And the fact, I know your view on endorsement, okay, but hopefully we can agree that half-baked endorsements by one vote, while people, it's, and then it's like you're supposed to act like Jesus Christ endorsed this candidate. But I don't know, Bill. Why don't you, anything you remember about that endorsement meeting and anything particularly about the Allen Freeman endorsement and how effed up the whole meeting was?
Well, the endorsement meeting was just absolutely, it was terrible. I mean, Jeff violated rules and did not care. I can't believe, out of all the times we took a vote, because I mean, there was like 15, 20 minutes between votes. How did that line up that somebody went to the bathroom and we took a vote right at that exact moment? Because there was such a big gap in between votes.
I think they were doing stuff too, like, weren't they, where, they would be moved on to another candidate race, but they're taking additional votes on races that had not yet, had an endorsed candidate. So I think there was a lot of, multitasking going on, and it still took like till 2 a.m. But Freeman got endorsed for Clerk of Courts by one vote. And then Barb Wiedenbein ultimately had messed up her petitions, which, by the way, tells you a lot about, I was pretty brutal to Barb Wiedenbein, that she should not have been running again. She's like, and I don't mean this as a mean thing, but she's like the Joe Biden, like she was it was time to retire. It was past time for her to retire, but she was running again. And it tells you about how the system works, that you have an incumbent candidate that can't do their petitions right and ends up having their petitions kicked for not doing them right. I don't know about your style, Bill, but if I were doing petitions for something, I have a cadre of 2 or 3, 4 people I have review them, some of which are lawyers, before I submit them, to make sure that I've got the stuff right on my petitions, because you don't want to get your petitions tossed, and especially not for some dumb error. And hers was tossed because I think the date, they filled in the date on when she said she was running for candidate after the petition was done. But anyway, Allen Freeman ends up getting endorsed, but it says a lot about the whole system that you have a candidate running that probably shouldn't be running. You have a Freeman ending up getting endorsed by one vote in a completely disorganized process, where I can say, had I not, and there were I think there were a couple votes in this, but had I been allowed to vote, even Debbie Sigrath going to the restroom or not, had I been allowed to vote, he would not have been endorsed, because that one vote would have changed the percentage to be below the threshold for him to be endorsed. So, but he ends up getting endorsed. Then he's on a slate card, and it just goes. There's never any accountability. You have a person. You have these slate cards with basically crooks on them, and we don't think that's ever going to come back to haunt us. That we keep putting forward these candidates that are bad role models. They're bad role models. Would you want Allen Freeman to be the role model for your kid? And the answer is no. And so that's the gist of that. Now, you had some recent posts. I thought I put them. I did it here somewhere, but you had some stuff recently about Allen Freeman and something to do with Milford schools. But why don't you? There were some things. Oh, here. Okay, so I'm going to share this. This was on. I was searching on. I guess. Hold on. Let me see if I got the right thing here. I thought it was right on it. That went away. So you had something. Here we go. This thing about Allen Freeman and something going on with Milford schools that you had put out in December. Maybe opine a little bit on what was going on with that. You're very tuned into Milford school stuff. I'm not. And whatever was going on with on this.
I can't really see it. Let me pull it up on my
Hold on,
end.
let me put it back up here again. I thought it was something you would. You have. I don't know if this is gonna. I didn't put this on charts or anything. So it was about Allen Freeman, about
Oh yeah.
I
So
joined with the liberals on a post where I called out
yeah.
the principal for
So
taking an inappropriate photo.
the prince. It took me a minute to remember. I write so much on Milford schools. It's so bad. Um, I wrote a post about in Milford schools about a principal. It's a very inappropriate picture with his subordinates, assistant principals. One of them's female, grabbing the principal's leg, pray like they're praising him. It's disgusting. The Milford principal is a joke. I call him Ty Ty, but he calls himself Dr. Ty Arnold. Anyways, I called out the bad behavior. Anybody that's conservative in Milford sees that principal, they're like, there's something not right about that principal. How he dresses. I don't know if you've seen the post on Change Clermont of this principal, but it's pretty bad. Allen Freeman was on the opposite end of it. And I sent an email to the Central Committee with screenshots of it. I'm like, anybody that's on Central Committee, you can say what you want about me, but you know that I've been fighting Milford schools for years. And I've taken the arrows that most of the people on Central Committee won't stand up and take because they just don't want to be in the limelight. All these people in Milford that sit on the in Miami Township, or they don't want to on the Central Committee. They don't want to stand up. I've actually flat out been told by the trustees in Miami Township. It's been years ago, but like Mary Wolf. We got to keep a good relationship with the school, so we don't talk about anything that goes on in the school district. Well, that's pathetic. We should talk about what goes on in the school district. But yeah, Freeman, if you put that thing back up, I put a screenshot of him liking the response of a liberal calling me out. Yeah, you can't. It's blurry, but it's on Change Clermont, and I put a post. Tracy Sparks, who sits on the Central Committee, she laughed at the idiotic post. Allen, thinks I sound like a crazy person because I think a principal taking sexualized photos with his staff and himself is inappropriate. So Allen did respond to me, and it was like a novel. After I sent the email to Central Committee, he responded to me because I think he was I accidentally hit the like button. Okay, two things. I didn't respond to Allen because I just don't have time to hear these pathetic excuses. If you saw the post and you accidentally hit the like button, okay, I could see maybe where that would happen. The fact is you were a coward. You sat there and watched me take arrows just like the other people in Milford on our Central Committee. Nobody, except maybe Tracy Sparks and just a couple of others who are in the city of Milford, but nobody. You don't see Greg Simpson getting on there, Bill, you're right. Nobody speaks out against the school. Nobody.
Everybody should be very aware of this. You are never going to see, or I will fall out of this chair, the time that you see a elected official at a partisan countywide or state rep type office actually working against a school levy or against something involving a school district. They will not do it because they do not want to do anything that will jeopardize their position. That's why it's very correct to say that politicians never start parades, they join them. Okay. They do not put themselves in, try to get any of these people, Claire Corcoran, let's take the commissioners, Bonnie, or regardless of what, and I'm not meaning this to pick on these people and David Painter, but ask them to come to some rally against the school or against some practice in a school or a school levy. They're not going to do it because they don't want to get involved in something that could affect their ability to get elected the next term in their office.
All right. So we're hold on.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to do something that I normally don't share what people write to me, but I'm going to make an exception because there's really nothing incriminating other than incriminating Allen Freeman's integrity, which is what we're doing right now. I'm going to read verbatim what Allen wrote because it's that pathetic. So after I emailed the Central Committee a picture of Allen and saying, Allen, you're I forget what I called him, a coward or something. I don't know if you got the email, Chris, but I sent an email about Allen. I said, here's what he messaged me on Change Clermont. He said, sorry, Bill, you are incorrect. I did not support that post. I only just now read it. Lie number one, I just now read it. Okay. You were obviously on there because you
yeah.
I had a video we got a video of you shooting the guy. It wasn't me shooting. I was superimposed with AI. Like,
I don't read posts. I just like them.
He said, also, I'm guessing you missed the issue 1 signs as well as the signs for Bernie Moreno. Oh, and the number of signs I put up for candidates throughout the township, as well as the doors I knocked on. Okay, here on this podcast, we had pictures within a few weeks of the election, and Allen Freeman only had an Allen Freeman sign in his yard. So, Allen, again, you're going to have to argue with the photographs. As for your current complaint, to be clear, I never liked that post. He actually denied liking the post. He denies it. I sent you a screenshot. So I did respond. I forgot I had responded to him. I said, Allen, 1, we have a picture of the front of your house I can send to you to argue with. Number 2, I sent the screenshot of your like of the post. Number 3, you lied to me when you said you'd vote to remove Jeff Corcoran and backpedaled. Why do you guys lie when you are caught? It's like Simpson. He got caught and lie and continued to lie. I mean, literally have photo evidence of all of this, and you're going to lie? And his response, I can't. So I do dispute the picture. Just because you have a picture on X date means nothing. He's trying to say that that Tracy Sparks laughing at something and liberals hearting something and he's liking it, that has nothing to do with the actual post, that I'm kind of superimposing his like onto, like, I'm the liar here. Allen, I'm sorry, I'm the liar. I just woke up and I said, you know what? I'm going to create a story that Allen Freeman liked a post. Something in 6 years of knowing you, I've never done. I just fictitiously did that. So he calls me a liar, and then he says, I had Bernie signs along with issue 1 signs, no lie. We have pictures of your house, dude. Unless you put them all the way in your backyard, up the hill. And then second, what about the other hours I put indoors, putting signs up elsewhere in township? Have a picture of that, or the hours I stood at the Board of Elections? You know, as your problem with Jeff, we've discussed it ad nauseum. First, try the person moving the motion in executive couldn't articulate the motion. As for the second try, you guys came for Jeff and didn't have a person to replace him with. It's not true. I offered to take over the Central Committee and run it without authoritarian. Just run it like a normal person would run it. Run the motions, run the meeting, and let people put motions on the floor. I mean, it's really not rocket science, but apparently it's too hard for people that
you're
have,
too you and I have a lot of differences, but even then you would be more fair than these other people, and that's not what they want. They don't want somebody that's fair.
And then he said, as I also recall, the vast majority of the Central Committee voted the same way. As for the like on the comment, I have no idea what happened. Well, dude, if you just now read it, I mean, obviously you're trying to say you never wanted.
You've been hacked. You've been hacked then.
Yeah. Take that as you wish. All right. I think this entire issue is weird. This was his last comments. I think the entire issue is weird and disappointing. Take that as you wish. Well, Allen, I think you're very weird and disappointing. That you're lying when I have photo evidence on the things you're lying about. I mean, if that doesn't speak to when people say, you know, that I'm joining Team Chris Hicks, nobody's joining Team Chris Hicks. You idiots are doing this behavior directly to us, and we're developing opinions of how ignorant you are because this is stupid. Like, I didn't really take the time to read this after I responded, but I'm just reading this and I'm like, this is really stupid, Allen. This is really stupid.
Well,
and the fact that you're running the common pleas clerks I'm scared to death of how incompetent our clerk's office is going to be.
In the spirit of bringing us to a close, I have one other thing after this, but what I put up on the screen now is I was looking for this picture and I found it buried in a post. This is a post of mine about Larry Householder's 61 million. Okay. This picture at the bottom is, typically when they have people come and knock for candidates, they take a picture, in the parking lot of, the BW3 or something. And this is from Freeman's campaign. By the way, the person on the left is Luke Householder. Okay. There, I think the one guy here's the other trustee, Nick Kelly, is there. This is RJ Mancini. Some of these names people want to know who they are, but I'm putting my arrow on them.
RJ Mancini
was
Mancini was helping Freeman.
Yes, that was one of the things that wasn't reported. He was being paid by the ORP helping Freeman, but never reported. But any event, what I want to point out is that Allen Freeman. The reason I put this up, Allen Freeman was known for being a lazy schlub when it came to campaigning. So that he didn't put in the work, he didn't door knock. For whatever you think of her, Jean Schmidt is known that she actually does go around door knocking and spend shitloads of time, right? Allen Freeman would go take these pictures and then leave without actually door knocking with the people, okay? So they do these they're actually kind of dumb, these door knock crusades, but there was this team that did this and he would come for the photo op and then take off because. So when you said all the door knocking he's done, yeah, really? Give me a break. The door knocking got done because of people paying for people to door knock for him.
Is there potential for Allen to be charged with a felony for his activities?
The thing that that is most important to me is to get, which he should have been in the first case, a violation of Ohio Revised Code 359903, which is receiving illegal corporate contributions, which is a penalty with up to a year in jail that's considered a felony level penalty. So, and he has not reported them to this day. He's gotten requests for payment from the people that did the work for him, never put it on a report. Now the people that did the work, it's a long story we're not going to cover here. They're saying they're not going to try to collect it, which means it's a corporate contribution. One of the things that's a problem for him, why he wouldn't report stuff, is that the activities were run through a company called Constant Content, which is in a corporation. Corporations cannot give away campaign services. They can't forgive debts. Be like, what if, Procter & Gamble can't have Procter & Gamble just cover somebody's campaign without, there's limits on what a corporation can do. And they can give to PACs and stuff like this, but they can't just, say do a bunch of work for a company, for a candidate, and then never charge them for it, never have them report it, anything like that. So but the point is, you just kind of triggered me, Bill, when you said about his saying something about door knocking or something, because his door knocking, he was known as being a schlub that came and took the photo up and then left. And that's, one of the reasons I call him the schlub, because I don't know that the guy's ever had a regular job. You and I, when we've gotten to know each other, we can talk about regular jobs we've had working for different companies. Some of these people have never had a regular job. They have no idea what the real world is like. And I don't know that Allen's ever had a regular job. Something I wanted to close on, but we can go further. I'm just watching the clock here. And we talked at the beginning about, some other things. But, part of what, I've been accused of is I ran some crooked operation to trick Fernando Cruz into giving money for an alternate slate card. I'm not going to get into that. That's complete nonsense. Okay. But one of the things so this was a mailer that was done by the Clermont GOP PAC. And so, these are the candidates that supported, whether you like them or don't like them, that's fine, whatever. Okay. And the back side of it, the print side of it, had this kind of rogues gallery of Clermont County politicians, okay, that had been involved with something corrupt, okay? And so you see Allen Freeman is on that list. Whether you like the list, don't like the list, whatever. By the way, everything here, if you notice, everything on here is linked to a media article or some supporting document. It's not like just having I want you to, you could compare and contrast a card that just says fake conservatives to this card that has an article on every one of these people and what they were involved with. But Freeman, $50,000 fine, violations, okay, not fake conservative, okay? Schmidt violations. So what happened with the reason why all of a sudden there was this dust up with Fernando Cruz, who I've never met, never talked to, is because there's some familial connection between Fernando Cruz and Allen Freeman. Okay. And so my understanding is that Fernando Cruz's wife got all bent out of shape, that on the PAC card project to focus on an alternate slate card, which I was obviously instrumental in, that Allen Freeman was highlighted as one of the bad stories of Clermont County politics. And that's what the issue was, is that it ripped. This is what I've been told through the grapevine, because I've never talked to Fernando Cruz. He never had followed through on, if you remember, Bill, when he said he was going to invite me to his Bible study, and he never did. But that's another thing in this mix, is there's a connection between Allen Freeman and Fernando Cruz. And the thing about this project to have an alternate slate card that the Reform the GOP PAC was behind, and Fernando Cruz was the significant funder, that it was one of the issues with it was the primary issue vis-a-vis Fernando Cruz was that it had a part of the creative work that dinged Allen Freeman. At the time, I had no idea that Allen Freeman had any connection to Fernando Cruz. So that's kind of just some background on that. But there's the key thing being there's a family connection between Allen Freeman and Fernando Cruz. All right.
I just don't. I don't know why we have elected officials. We have one elected official that I know that I can count on that will not cater or take a knee onto unethical behavior, and that is our current sheriff. I don't know how you feel. I feel strongly that our current sheriff that we have in office will not succumb to smiling and shaking hands with somebody that's, like this. I won't divulge all the things and all the reasons that I know out of respect, because I respect our sheriff a lot. But we need, for the elected officials that watch this, you need to look at that as a model of how you can get on board with being ethical and having some integrity, to stand up and make a statement when somebody and say when somebody does wrong. David Painter, you're a well-respected commissioner, except for the animal shelter people that don't like you. But a lot of people in Clermont County obviously respect David Painter because his vote numbers. I had kind of a bet. We didn't bet anything monetary, but I bet David Painter that his numbers were going to be in the low 50s. I felt that strongly that he was going to get dinged. I knew he was going to win, but I'm like, you're not going to win by a heavy margin this time. I told him that. He won. It was at 64%, 63%, whatever. It was over.
I did an analysis, of the. They each had they all did worse in their last election, but not a significant percentage. It was a couple points, minimal, not some significant percentage.
So people respect David Painter in Clermont County. Say what you will, but the numbers don't lie. As much as you don't like him, the numbers don't lie. So my opinion is, David doesn't have any reason to change what he's doing. That's the problem right now. Allen Freeman is serving as clerk of courts. He doesn't have any incentive. If David Painter's numbers came back at 51%, you would see David Painter make.
But I think the key to that is that in a primary, in a Trump election, whoever has an R next to their name is going to get a vote, right? And so I did some analysis in the general election, because we're talking about the general election, okay?
Right, the general, not the primary.
The thing is, the real change has to happen in primaries, because if we don't get different candidates in some of these offices in primaries, and by the way, I would agree with you, if we were making a list of all of the current candidates in office and what order they should be replaced with somebody else, David Painter's not going to be top on my list or on your list. Okay. But there, what's going to really take to have positive change in our county is some people get through in the primary that are not part of the swamp internal backroom system. And you and I both know at this point that a lot of these people, Allen Freeman's kind of a fluke with this whole Clerk of Courts thing.
He literally
on any important position, they're in the back room deciding who's the next person going to be. They're controlling it. It's not even the central committee, if you follow what I'm saying. It's Linda Fraley. It's a few key actors that control blocks of votes that are in the back room deciding who can get through. And until somebody can get through who's not part of that, who won't be a part of that deal, it's not going to change. Or somebody that's in office could refute that deal. I think Chris Stratton, the sheriff, is the closest thing to that right now. But that, there wasn't anybody that primaried him, right? Like, nobody else was trying for that office. That's probably one of the hardest jobs, wouldn't you agree, in the county?
Oh.
That's like a real job.
It's
not like Clerk of Courts. It's a real job where you could really F things up.
They work their butts off over there. They really do. I mean, they get calls in the middle of the night. I mean, it's.
So, by the way, I don't talk to you and I have I'll say it a different way. I've always said this, the sheriff's office is the tallest midgets in the Clermont County political system. By far. You probably talk to them a lot more. I intentionally try not to talk to, not because I don't respect them, but because for their own protection, if you know what I'm saying. Like, it's better not to have ever talked about things, when I'm, because I'm railing on about so many things that involve the court system, to Colby, that kind of stuff. It's better. But to your point, I think that Chris Stratton thought that what happened with Greg Simpson was a miscarriage of justice. Okay. That he lied his ass off to the sheriff, was making threats, and Mark Tucolvey covered it up. Okay. It was a miscarriage of justice. And then is to wrap us up here and then what happened in the Central Committee wasn't that anybody ever brought up that it was wrong what Greg Simpson had done to me and to lie, but instead they propped Greg Simpson up as the new basically chaplain for the committee in the face of Chris Stratton, a committee member, and Chris Stratton resigns, right? Because it is so, and at least you got to give credit. I would have preferred Chris Stratton not resign and stand up and give a powerful speech against the way the system is operating, but he was trying to make a statement, I'm sure, by resigning, that key statement being, I can't effing take this shit anymore. It is ridiculous the way this place operates.
That's the way I took it too. And I do believe that if you are an elected official, you do have to maintain some composure. I'm sure Chris Stratton wanted to stand up in that room and just say, like, nail Greg against the wall. But unfortunately, when you're an elected official, you have to maintain a level of composure. And
well, if we could get Chris Stratton to just we don't want him to become Richard K. Jones in Butler County, but if we could get just a couple pints of blood transfusion, because Richard K. Jones would have stood up, right?
Sheriff Jones is, he would have.
He would have not accepted, and he wouldn't have accepted when.
But he would have made sure the news media. He would have made sure the news media was there, though. That's the key with it.
Right. And he would have guilted the prosecutor into making sure the charges got filed, right? Like, he would not have accepted. We just need somebody to stand up and be frustrated. And the good news is Chris Stratton is the only man that's had the character to do what he did, right?
Right.
But on the other hand, he's then not exposed to as much of the bullshit sitting there in the meetings where he would just be incensed by it. So, hey, event, we've covered way more than Allen Freeman here.
Yeah, Yeah,
You know,
well,
Alan Freeman's just emblematic of, I think I wouldn't say like, it's not even like just kind of I won't even say the worst. I would just say Alan Freeman is emblematic of the low standards of the Clermont County Republican system that are seen in too many places. That a person like him, after a $50,000 fine, after the householder thing, after running against an endorsed candidate, after dinging an endorsed candidate, he's the endorsed candidate. He's getting paid money now on the taxpayers, and nobody brings it up. Nobody brings up all the stuff that he has done because it's just the mediocrity because he's a company man. Frankly, these people, to the point, Bill, you made of he told you he was going to be for getting rid of Greg Simpson or Jeff Corcoran, and then he didn't. Okay. These people ultimately, what's the thing that they're really trusted for? Company men. Greg Simpson, Allen Freeman, when push comes to shove, no matter what they tell you one-on-one, they're going to support the system. The system's going to come first, right? Even when the system is wrong and corrupt. So, all right. I'll give you any closing comment you want to make.
My only closing comment is, again, I don't feel bad, guilty, and quite frankly, I don't lose a second of sleep over anybody in the Central Committee that now doesn't like me because of this path I've taken to work on the outside, because I gave it a solid 6 years of working on the inside trying to bring change. So I gave it more than a fair shake, and quite frankly, the Central Committee failed to uphold what I felt we should have done. We want to keep it on the inside, then fix the problems from the inside. But it's not possible. So,
well, you are even in that time, you were an outsider within the system. Okay.
right.
I was an outsider and am an outsider within the system, but on the outside of the system. The thing that people should be wondering, if the two of us, with the differences we have had, can come together and do things like this, get to know each other more, focus on the root causes and the big issues, that's the thing people should take notice of.
They don't.
Is that it's time for change. And we're now giving you, by putting these recordings out here, we're giving people the way that they can come learn about this stuff and be better informed so that we don't keep making the same mistakes down the road. Because if Bill Thomas and Chris Hicks can be together talking about these people and agreeing on, 80% of things, then there's no reason that we can't, help the voters to get to a point, and a future committee to get to a point of real change.
And I can tell you, we're just not sitting here griping. There are plans in the work to fix these problems. I mean, we may not fix it in the first election cycle, but change is going to happen.
All right. Those of you that listen in the middle of the night, and Allen Freeman, that might be 2-3 a.m. in the morning when he's listening. Thank you all for taking the time to listen to Bill and I in our 6th conversation, probably our 10th or 11th conversation overall, but 6th conversation specifically about a person involved in Clermont politics. Have a good what's left of the evening. Thanks.